Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. And on this edition of Sports from the Couch, we got to talk about the Chicago Bulls and maybe some additions, more additions coming to the team on the west side. But before we get to all that, let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcasts on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves. You can see us on a video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Make sure you hit that little bell and subscribe button to be notified every single time we upload a brand new episode. We're also on Roku. That's right. Check us out over at the Rewind Sports 60. Shout out to Jerry Riles. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. If you would like to support the network, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer. Buy us a cup of coffee. If you can't, that's all right. We still love you. But if you can, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. And on Teespring, teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves to see some of the swag we got over here on the network. And if you would like to keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network when it comes to the podcasts like The Good Brothers, The Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, Gone Missing podcast, Murder Mysteries and more, Sports from the Couch, and our interviews with athletes and celebrities every single time they are uploaded, visit us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. And we're on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. Check us out to see every time we go live to do some reactions, and of course our marathons if you missed any one of our previous shows. With that out of the way, let's get into today's edition. I got to give a quick shout out because I've been hearing the rumblings and the stumblings and everything going on about Paul Millsap. That's right. Paul Millsap, somebody who, if you're an NBA fan, you've seen him play forever. I mean, at this point, dude is 36 years old, right? Like, we've seen him around the league. A very nice veteran. And you're hearing the rumors and the stutterings of the chance that the Bulls are in on bringing in Millsap. So I needed to talk to some of the experts. I needed to look at what they were talking about. And I landed at the Chicago Tribune. Shout out to Jamal Collier. It's Collier. Check him out at the Chicago Tribune. This was part of their Chicago Bulls Q&A. Are they done adding players in free agency? Or is Paul Millsap a possibility? And how does Coby White fit into next season rotation? So I actually was very interested on those two, and he did an entire Q&A. You check it out, please, over at the Chicago Tribune. It was posted on September 1st, 2021. But I wanted to take those two experts and take what they gathered together and see what the feeling is. So let's get right into it. And this is part of their Q&A. So again, shout out to Chicago Tribune doing the Lord's work for the association. So let's get right into it. The first question that really piqued my interest was, what do you think about the Bulls being interested in Paul Millsap? His numbers are still very good. Can he be a key rotational piece still? So this is what Jamal wrote. I like the fit. Even at 36, Millsap has a solid rotation player for the Denver Nuggets last season, averaging 9 points and 4.7 rebounds in 20.8 minutes per game. He's a 15-year veteran who has been around winning teams and can knock down a three-pointer at 34.3% last season. And it's nice to have that type of versatility. You saw that a lot with Thad Young, that Thad Young did a lot of different things. You know, he didn't have to be the focal point, even though he was. But he didn't have to be. He could facilitate and he could guard, he could rebound. He did everything. That's why he was so important. And to have so many utilities in a guy like that is so priceless. And if you're a team that's really trying to contend, it's a nice piece to have. Let's continue on. I wouldn't move Patrick Williams out of the starting lineup for Millsap, but the Bulls need another reliable, true power forward in the rotation. While the Lowry market and sign and trade last week made sense for both him and the Bulls, his departure left the team thin in the front court, although Jones could line up at power forward. Plus, Millsap would bring strong defensive tendencies and instincts, traits the Bulls could use more of. And you saw with Daniel Tice being gone, Thaddeus Young being gone, and then Laurie being gone, even though Laurie's not you're not going to call him a supreme defensive player, right? There is still something to that type of body being in the lane. And if you're able to get somebody like a Paul Millsap, it is, again, answering a need that this team has had. And I keep going back to this, that the Chicago Bulls right now, you can't count anything out of them making any type of moves, being in any type of deal. Because we've seen from this front office how much they're willing to go out there, to risk, to go make that big move. And, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say Paul Millsap is this big move that wins them a championship. But again, it's this creativity, going for the guy you normally wouldn't think they would go after, answering a need that helps you now, that also helps development of other players on your team, that also answers needs that are going to help, accentuate the greatness of other players. That's creativity. That's thinking forward. That's what MK and Mark Eversley and Arturas Karnisovas have done. And that's huge for the Chicago Bulls. And their fan base that have not seen this type of activity, this type of movement, this type of thought process from their front office in a long time. Now, these are all just rumors. There's no saying that this will happen. And, it finishes off with this. However, Millsap might be the best free agent remaining on the market. And other suitors, such as Brooklyn Nets and Golden State Warriors, would give him a better chance at a championship. Now, the Bulls are going to have some money. They're going to be able to offer him more money than both Golden State and Brooklyn. So he's a great fit for Brooklyn, especially defensively. I don't know what's going to go on with Golden State. It all depends on Klay's health. Draymond looks like Draymond, so that's good for them. And, Steph is all about his health and how much the league is going to break him down. But Golden State could be good, right? Golden State could be great. Let me know your thoughts, how great Golden State is going to be, whether or not they're going to be as good as Golden State normally is or was. But Paul Millsap does make sense on a lot of these different teams. He's so interesting for the Bulls, though. And what really has the gears going up here in the old dome ski that isn't working properly most times. What if he does decide to sign with the Bulls? Not just money-wise. That's obviously good, but you could still make money. He's going to be making money, barring any injuries, for a few more years. And I know he wants to win a championship, right? But what if he does choose Chicago? What does that say in your mind? What does that say reading between the lines for what's going on around the league? We've seen guys like DeMar DeRozan choose Chicago. There was the rumblings about LaMarcus Aldridge. Now you're hearing this about Paul Millsap. The Bulls are in it with veterans, guys around the league that have been around the league when the Bulls had bad reputations, right? Like we're here for Gar Forman and John Paxson. And they're able to kind of now, are they going to rehab that relationship, that aura that they had? That's why this move is fascinating. It's not necessarily what it's going to do for the roster and making them a clear-cut 1, 2, 3 in the Eastern Conference. We'll see what happens with Ben Simmons and Philadelphia. But it's an interesting move, again, for the big picture, for the long term, with this front office and how creative they can be. And I keep using that word creative. And shout out to all you new listeners who have been able to really help us out here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves Network, on YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves. I really appreciate you hoop heads coming and joining us. It's very interesting to see where all this hype is going to go, though, for the Chicago Bulls. And I love that you guys are joining us over here. And I think to see the creativity that you guys have heard me say about it is what's so exciting about it. Because this is not something the Bulls would normally do. This is not something that I think I would have expected, this type of name, this type of action to theoretically happen so fast. But yet again, the roster has been so crazy of a turnover. And speaking of how crazy fast of a turnover the roster has been, there's only 2 guys left. And that's Coby White and Zach LaVine. And we'll get to the Coby White stuff in just a second. But if they do find a way to use some of this trade exemption and all this other minute stuff in the NBA to get a Paul Millsap or somebody else of that type. You got Bradley. And now it's getting very interesting for Chicago. Where do you rank them, though? I keep thinking about this, and, I kind of go up and down, and, you hear national experts like a Nick Friedel talk about they're probably a 7 or 8, and then locally people probably as high as 5. But I really wonder, let me know on Twitter at Mike and Media and on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk, where are the Bulls in the power rankings right now? And then where would they be if they add somebody like a Paul Millsap? If you had to describe the Chicago Bulls right now, what would it be? Would it be decent? Would it be nice? Will it be overrated, overhyped? Like, what would you think when you hear the Chicago Bulls and moves like this? Because I think it's not just, this isn't like a flashy move. This isn't like a huge splash move, but it's something that if you're a fan of the NBA, you know that this is something the Bulls wouldn't normally do. Like, yeah, it's an older veteran, but it's an older veteran that kind of makes sense for what they want. It's not Dwayne Wade or Rajon Rondo. Shout out to them, right? So let's continue on with this article over from Jamal Collier. Shout out let me know if you guys know it on the comment section below over at the Chicago Tribune. This was the question he was asked. How do you see the rotation minutes playing out once Coby White comes back? One of the many things I'm interested in is going into training camp where White fits into this team and ultimately into the Bulls' future is right at top. Overall, Bulls additions have a chance to be a positive development for White. He was much better towards the end of last season when he played off the ball more frequently and got higher percentage off catch and shoot opportunities. And it was our biggest debate on the show, and our biggest criticism towards Lauri Markkanen is Coby White at the end of the season took whatever opportunities were given to him, and he capitalized them as much as he could, as much as the team let him. He took them as far as he could, and there were games where he took it over. Now, what's going to be the thing to watch out for Coby White is now that there's been so many additions, how much run is he going to get? We'll get into, I think, a little bit about that in just a second, but it's the Lonzo Ball effect. Before all these moves, or before Lonzo Ball was traded from the Lakers to New Orleans, he was asked to do things that he couldn't do. He was asked to be something that he was not supposed to be. So what happens when you're somebody like Coby White that had so much on your shoulders, and now as this time comes around, there's a lot of answers now. You're not the number one option. You're going to be a major part of it, but you're no longer being asked to carry this entire franchise. I really want to know how much that impacts Coby as the season goes on and as he recovers from the injuries. Let's continue on with this. The guard rotation looks crowded, but he's going to play a huge role as a reserve. He might be better suited as an instant offense coming off the bench anyway. I would guess the Bulls will be most effective staggering Zach LaVine's and DeMar DeRozan's minutes, keeping one of them in the game at all times. And White should get paired with defensive-minded Alex Caruso often in some 3 guarded lineups. These should all play to his benefit, and I think White will accept the change in his role. I'm not sure where this ultimately leaves White, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? He's not one of their draft picks. And if they don't find a spot for him or they don't like where this is heading, they will move on from him. And we've seen that they've done that. Let's continue on here. These should all play benefits, and I think White will accept the change in his role. I'm not sure where this ultimately leaves White. It's not for nothing that the front office held on to him and after turning over virtually the entire roster. And it doesn't appear his name came up much in any credible trade conversations. But if the Bulls had a ton of faith in him, they wouldn't have seen a need to add so many guards. Once he gets healthy, I think White will get a lot of minutes. Whether he can be productive and more efficient in those minutes will be the key to whether he sticks around going forward. And I think that's the one thing anybody who's covering the Bulls, anybody who's paying attention to the Bulls, knows that this front office seems to have a quick trigger finger when it comes to making moves, getting out of things, not liking the way the course is going. So for Coby White, what do I think is best for Coby White? Obviously, being off the ball, he doesn't need to be the facilitator. I don't think that's what he's built for. I think he's built to be instant offense. I think he's built to put up 30 points, take a lot of shots, be a killer. He's got ice in his veins. Does that mean that he's a great point guard? No. Does that mean that he should be your starting point guard? No. It makes him valuable because if you can find somebody that's instant offense in the NBA, you got to find a roster spot for him.
But you got to be, again, we're going to use the word of the day or the word of the month or the word of the year for this team, creative in finding offense for him, finding ways to enhance that. And I think Billy Donovan of any coach can do that. I think moves like getting a Paul Millsap to help with defense, getting guys like Alex Caruso to help with three-pointers in defense, Lonzo Ball to be a starting point guard, to be able to run a quick offense, to be able to facilitate a half-court offense. Like, there is enough there now that you're not asking Coby White to be Superman. And in today's NBA, and hell, any era of the NBA, we've seen what happens when you ask too much of a player or ask for something a player just cannot do or it's not in their wheelhouse. And I think for Coby, it was a long time they were asking him to be the stereotypical point guard. They wanted him to be Chris Paul. He's not Chris Paul. He's a different dynamic player. I like Coby White a lot. But we have to also be honest about the entire situation. Follow the money and the moves the Bulls have done. And as the year goes on, we're going to see how much his health gets better and how he gels with this team and how he finds a role. Now, if you see that he thrives as the sixth man, becomes Jamal Crawford, and you're off to Sizzler with this man. That's how bad of a dude Coby White can be on offense. That's how good this Bulls team can be. That changes things a little bit. When all of a sudden your second unit is dangerous, not only defensively, not only just to get you through the mud, but offensively could put up points, that's very dangerous. That's something the Bulls have not had in a little while. But you got to get them healthy. This Bulls front office is, as the only thing predictable about them, as cliche as this may be, is how unpredictable they are. They will make moves. They will move on. They are going to critique you, and they're going to be harsh, and they're going to be stern, and they're going to be firm, and I guess fair. But we're going to see over the next year what happens with Coby White, and then we're going to see into the offseason what happens with Zach LaVine. He's got a new agency. He's coming up for this big contract. I think they're already working on one. I think they're going to wait till next year. But the Bulls are in an interesting spot. And I'm fascinated to see the development of Coby White with all these nice, really good young players and veterans now around him. And seeing what Zach LaVine does. This all comes down to Zach LaVine, right? Olympic gold medalist Zach LaVine. Like all-star Zach LaVine. And then, again, if they find a way to get a veteran, a defensive-minded veteran that's been through it all, that's won a lot of games, that wants to win more, is towards the end of his career, signing someone like Paul Millsap will really just, again, shoot a bunch of energy to the Bulls fandom. And I think for the NBA, I'm really interested to see how nationally the Bulls are being felt around the league. I've heard some really big highs from people and really big lows, but let me know your thoughts, guys. How do you think the Bulls will be if they sign the veteran, the forward Paul Millsap, on top of all the big moves that they've already made? Let me know your thoughts about the moves that have been made already around the NBA and the Chicago Bulls. It's never a dull day in the association. Thank you all so much for joining us on this edition of Sports from the Couch. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike N Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. Be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. We're on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves. Make sure you guys are up to date every single time we upload an episode of The Good Brothers, the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, Murder Mysteries and more, The Gone Missing podcast, Sports from the Couch, and of course our interviews with athletes and celebrities. That's on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves. Check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Like us, hit that little bell, be notified every single time we upload a brand new episode. We're on Roku, friends. Shout out to the Rewind, Sports 60, and Jerry Rouse. Check us out over there, over at our friends at the Rewind, Sports 60. Become a producer of the network. Buy us a cup of coffee. Become a producer. Show us some love if you can. If you can't, that's okay. We still love you at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. And of course, check out our swag over at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. We're on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. And keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network over at Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.